Good morning, students. In the series of learning this chapter, The Making of National Movement 1870s and 1947, we have learned that how nationalism is so important to gain the freedom from the British and what kind of challenges were faced by the Indians after the 1857. Today, we are going to continue learning about the emergence of nationalism. The above mentioned development led the people to ask a crucial question. What is this country of India and for whom it is meant? Students, I think we have completed this chapter, but let me go through it once again. The answer that gradually emerged was India was the people of India. All the people, irrespective of caste, creed, language, or gender, and the country, its resources and systems were meant all for them. With this answer came the awareness that the British were exercising control over the resources of India and the lives of the people. And until the control was ended, India could not be for Indians. This consciousness began to be clearly stated by political associations formed after 1850, especially those that came into being in the 1870s and 1880s. Most of these were led by English educated professionals such as lawyers. The more important ones were the Pune Sarvajanik Sabha, the Indian Association, the Madras Mahajan Sabha, the Bombay Presidency Association, and of course the Indian National Congress. As already explained to you, बहुत ज़्यादा ज़रूरत पड़ रही थी कि अब एक ऐसा ग्रुप होना चाहिए जो कि हम सभी को यूनाइट भी कर सके और हम सबके लिए यूनाइटेडली लड़ भी सके. And that's how these organizations came forward. Pune Sarvajanik Sabha, as the name suggests, was only meant for the development into the areas of Pune, and so on. Out of all these associations, Indian National Congress, हम जानते हैं, which is still a big political party in India. With this, the idea of sovereignty also came. Sovereignty means the capacity to act independently without outside interference. The dissatisfaction with the British rule intensified in 1870s and 1880s. The Arms Act was passed in 1878, disallowing Indians from possessing arms. In the same year, the Vernacular Press Act and the critical, which was also enacted in an effort to silence those who were critical of the government. The act allowed the government to confiscate the asset of newspaper, including their printing presses, if the newspaper published anything that was objectionable. In 1883, there was a furor over the attempt by the government to introduce the Ilbert Bill. The bill provided for the trial of British or European persons by Indians and sought equality between British and Indian judges in the country. But when white opposition forced the government to withdraw the bill, Indians were enraged. The event highlighted the racial attitudes of the British in India. We already have learned about all these bills. Ilbert Bill, Vernacular Press Act, and so on were actually not acceptable, and they clearly showed the inequalities being practiced between Indians and the British power in India. And this has actually opened the eyes of the Indians to realize that British do not practice equality with themselves. So the need came to be educated as well as to fight against the British. The need for an all-India organization of educated India had been felt since 1880, but the Ilbert Bill controversy deepened this desire. The Indian National Congress was established when 72 delegates from all over the country met at Bombay in December 1885. The early leadership, Dadabhai Nauroji, Firoz Shah Mehta, Badruddin Tayyibji, W.C. Banerjee, Surendranath Banerjee, Romesh Chandra Dutt, S. Subramanya Mariar, among others, were largely from Bombay and Calcutta. Nauroji, a businessman and publisher, settled in London, and for a time member of the British Parliament, guided the younger nationalist, a retired British official. A.O. Hume also played a part in bringing Indians from the various regions together. So these two people, especially the Nauroji, a businessman from London, and A.O. Hume became the pillars of the organization Indian National Congress, and they have guided them as well as motivated them to fight for the nation unitedly. Now let us continue in detail about the next paragraph, a nation in the making. It was very important to have a nation because after the Mughal power, there was no single rule who could dominate over India and keep them united. There was no single ruler. So it was very important that first of all we should have one single ruler or at least a unity among each other. We shouldn't be a different presidencies instead of having one single nation. It has often been said that the Congress in the first 20 years was moderate in its objective and methods. During this period, it demanded a greater voice for Indians in the government and in administration. It wanted the Legislative Council to be made more representative, given more power, and introduced in provinces where none existed. It demanded that Indians be placed in high position in the government. For this purpose, it was called for civil service examination to be held in India as well, not just in London. The demand for Indianization of the administration was part of a movement against racism, since most important jobs at the time were monopolized by white people. And the British generally assumed that Indians could not be given positions of responsibility. Since British officers were sending a major part of their large salaries home, Indianization, it was hoped, would also reduce the drain of wealth to England. Other demands included the separation of judiciary from the executive, the repeal of Arms Act, and the freedom of speech and expression. The early Congress also raised a number of economic issues. It declared that British rule had led to poverty and famines. Increase in the land revenue had impoverished peasants and zamindars, and exports of grains to Europe had created food shortages. The Congress demanded reduction of revenue, cut in military expenditures, and more funds for irrigation. It passed many resolutions on the salt tax, treatment of Indian laborers abroad, and the suffrage of the forest dwellers caused by an interfering forest administration. All this shows that despite being a body of educated elite, the Congress did not talk only on behalf of professional groups, zamindars, or industrialists. Now, here the INC has become one of the political power which could influence the British decision. So, as we have read in the first paragraph, that they were moderate. They wanted just a representation along with the British. Here, they had no motive of removing the British from India. They just wanted to share powers with them so that they can make decisions for the Indians and for their benefits. That's why they have put up certain demands. They have demanded for the representation in the parliament as well as for conducting the elections, including the Indian leaders also, and so on. But this wasn't so easy the way we were thinking that a one political party could make the things easier, but that wasn't so very easy, and British was not that very easy to catch on. So there were many differences and there were many kind of opinions which were forming against the British as well as against the Indian and especially the INC. The moderate leaders wanted to develop public awareness about unjust nature of British rule. So they wanted to create this awareness among the people that whatever British are doing in India, the way they are dominating us, it's not in favor of Indians. They published newspapers, wrote articles, and showed how British rule was leading to the economic ruin of the country. They criticized British rule in their speeches and sent representatives to different parts of the country to mobilize public opinion. They felt that British had respect for ideals of freedom and justice, and so they could accept the just demands of Indians. What was necessary, therefore, was to express these demands and make the government aware of the feelings of the Indians. That's all for today, students. We'll continue the lecture tomorrow. Thank you so much. Have a nice day.